Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the EU Challenger Series Qualifiers. My name is Munchables, and joining me once again is Sona and X-Scoundrel. And we have a little bit of an announcement to make before we jump into the third game of the day. I'm sure you guys remember that yesterday we had a game between Team Kinguin and Alternate Attacks that unfortunately wasn't able to be played on stream, and we thought was going to be a forfeit. There's been further investigation. The issue in the end was not at the player's end, it was to do with the client, and therefore we're going to have the game rescheduled until the end of tomorrow. So that game will still happen. So I said that ATN were 0-2 down. They are not. That was their first loss, and they get a rematch versus Team Kinguin at the end of tomorrow. So forget the standings that you thought you knew. They have changed. That match, or the forfeit from yesterday, has been cancelled, and we'll have a rematch at the end of tomorrow. But let's start talking about the match at hand. It's going to be Asus ROG Army up against Nerv. What are your feelings coming into this matchup, guys? We'll start with you, Sona.
I think Nerv yesterday had a bit of a shaky start, but proved themselves pretty strong later on. Asus ROG Army didn't really have the best of performances against LDLC. They kind of just gave a few kills to a Poppy early on, and the Poppy stomped all over them, brought down the Banhammer. But Asus ROG Army do have some strong players there. At points, mechanically, they looked okay. Their macro at points was okay as well. So if they are able to get an early lead against Nerv, perhaps they stand a shot. I would still have to go thinking that Nerv are going to take this game.
Yeah, I think I agree. I didn't see enough of the early game of Asus ROG to say that I think they could challenge Nerv. Nerv's only issues that we saw was in that early game period versus Babaski. They seemed to come back with a late game orientated composition. They played the later game team fights very well. And if I'm completely honest, a lot of the drafting I had serious questions about when it came to Asus ROG. I mean, the Fizz really didn't work out. There was a couple of communication issues that potentially cost them some very vital kills and lost them a lot of momentum in that game. It's on paper, it looks like Nerv should quite easily and comfortably take the game, but this is the Challenger Series qualification. We have seen anything happen. I mean, Team Larson, everyone counted out, and they managed to pick up a win, so let's not count out Asus ROG Army just yet.
I mean, we all just counted out Alien Tech as well, thinking that they were going to lose the game. So I think if you're an Asus ROG fan, you just have to say, yesterday was Nerv's, today they're going to play the way they usually play and be able to step up against Nerv.
Sure.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the champion select as it's already kicked off. Asus ROG versus Nerv. We've got Zyra and Rengar banned out from Asus. And then we've got Camille banned out for Nerv on that red side. Unsurprising to see Camille banned on the red side. Another Katarina ban. We've seen that ban 3 or 4 times now across today and yesterday. Yet to see it picked.
Yeah, Katarina has been receiving a little bit of attention in the mid lane. She has become incredibly strong to people who know and feel comfortable with how to play her new kit. I still struggle with the new Katarina kit, if I'm completely honest, so people not comfortable picking her up in a competitive match like this. Obviously, the Camille, we've seen the Wrath of Camille. Forge showed us exactly what she could do. I think most teams are pretty comfortable taking that straight off, either be it blue side or red side.
If I'm Asus ROG, I'm really prioritizing jungle here just because of how weak Memento actually looked in the early game on that Kha'Zix yesterday. I think you get something like a Lee Sin for eco and actually put early pressure into the enemy jungle, get a mid laner that pushes pretty well as well, perhaps a Syndra, and you can really force Nerv on the back foot. And we saw against Babaski when they're on the back foot, it takes them quite a while to be able to get back into the game.
So they banned the Jace here against well, actually, the only person we've seen play Jace was Alien Tech Zaziado, so Jace comes through as a ban here. Potentially against Yoppa. We saw Yoppa play a lot of Jace top lane during ESL Premiership stuff last year, so, Yoppa has been known to pick up these top lane carries, trying to stray away from this tank meta. We noticed and noted yesterday that he played a lot of Fiora where possible. Didn't quite work out the way he would have wanted it, but Yoppa not known to shy away from picking a carry in the top lane.
And especially when you consider that going into a tanky meta, if you're against something like a Poppy and you're a ranged hero in the top lane, certainly for the first few levels, you're going to have a pretty good time in that match. Sure. You're going to be able to harass away. So not too surprised to see things like that banned out. But on the other side of that, it's left a lot of power picks open right now. I mean, what are you guys expecting to see picked out? We've only got 1 jungle ban. We've only got 1 support ban as well. So there's a lot available right now.
I think the Syndra's quite an obvious pick here for Rog. You know, she's one of the strongest mid laners at the moment. Ryze is banned out. We have seen a bit of Cassio as well, but it hasn't always worked out as well as it could do. If I'm Nerv, I'd probably pick an Orianna into that and build a composition more around team fighting. So I think Syndra is a really obvious first pick.
Interesting, you know, you said that there's a lot of power picks available. This often is how the draft phase is played, right? On red side, you want to try and keep at least 3 up, so that if you get 1 lost on the first pick, you then have 2 to pick from. And you know, Karma is still available here. You can take a top laner or even top tier jungler on this rotation. So a lot of it comes down to power picks. Interestingly enough, Nerv really valuing actually Poppy for sure here, but they're obviously going to be thinking about what they potentially want to take. But if I were them, I'd maybe lock in the Poppy and Karma, or you know, Poppy and Nami. Definitely get my support in on this rotation.
I think Nami works just as well as Karma these days and is the locker alongside that Poppy. So I don't think you really need the Karma as much. The Nami especially works into someone who might pick a Jhin, because you know it's going to have that long range ability to stop the ultimate coming out. So Poppy, very strong top laner, really not countered by anything apart from perhaps Camille, who is already banned out. So Nerv going safe with their first picks, waiting to see how the rest of Asus ROG Army's composition really rounds itself out.
Yeah, I'm curious now as to Asus ROG where they go in the draft from here. Do they look to get their own support and top laner, or do they look to try and pick the most powerful available in that jungle role and in that top lane role, or sorry, in that AD carry role?
You've still got jungle available, so if I were them, I would potentially be thinking about picking up my jungler now, because you know you're probably going to lose it on next rotation if you and your opposition are thinking of the same jungler. You don't necessarily need to pick up your support, but maybe you could think about picking up an AD carry on this rotation, because you know they don't want to lock in and lose the AD carry with the Nami. And you can see right here, they've gone for an AD carry, they've gone for a jungler, Rek'Sai up there as that top tier, and Varus, who has emerged as one of the top tier AD carries in the Challenger scene qualification.
He absolutely has. I mean, the sheer damage that he can put out, especially towards that late game. We saw last game how much a Varus can do. Alternative X just went off the scale with Varus in that last game. Managed to get himself a triple kill towards the end as well.
I was talking to one of the OS coaches, a guy called Iniro, and I was discussing Varus and the sort of emergence, and he said classically people would be picking it into Caitlyn and Jhin, because obviously Varus has that range and you can sometimes win trades in lane. But as you go further, you know, you say he's got that percentage max health damage on his W. He can shred tanks a little bit, albeit it is in magic damage, so you can itemize against it, but he does have the range that a lot of other these tank type shred AD carries wouldn't have, and he also has spikes that happen a little bit earlier than the likes of Vayne and Kog'Maw, obviously, who we don't tend to see too much. I mean, Vayne maybe, we saw a lot of her over the previous few months, but you know, Kog'Maw very much so on the opposite end, maybe more of an AP carry. But you know, he has that ability to spike a little bit earlier and still has portions of max percentage health based shred.
So the reason that I think we're seeing Asus ROG prioritize Rek'Sai over something like Lee Sin as well is just of Eco's comfort on the champion. He really, I think it's his favorite champion at the moment is the Rek'Sai, so picking that over Lee Sin makes sense just because of how comfortable he is on it. I like the fact they've got a good mid laner for Liv Xian as well, because yesterday he was forced onto the Fizz, which really didn't work out for him. I think he'll be a lot more comfortable on Syndra, as most mid laners are at the moment. And then you see the LeBlanc and Caitlyn pick here. So you said actually Varus can be used to counter the Caitlyn. At the moment, I don't think that is quite as important as it used to be.
No, for sure.
And I actually worry slightly for Nerv's push here in the bot lane as well, because Varus Karma is just going to push them in really, really hard. Caitlyn Nami is going to struggle to deal with that push.
We now see as well Maokai and Karma locked in, the final 2 for the Asus ROG composition. So now we have all 5 locked in here. Talk me through a little bit what this composition is going to try and achieve, X-Scoundrel.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and I much prefer the draft that's come out from Asus ROG Army this time round compared to yesterday. You have the long-range siege that the Varus will provide. You have the ability then to capitalize on that with the dive that the Maokai and Rek'Sai provide. This is just generally a far better siege composition. If you're looking to optimize and take on global objectives, this is way better than what they were doing yesterday, which yesterday they really relied on split pushing. This time round they have got a more solid team fight. They've got long-range poke. They've got really good siege with the Varus and the Syndra. This is better for their potential to siege onto turrets, better for their potential dive onto turrets as well with the Rek'Sai and Maokai. It's far more calculated, it has less things that could go wrong, and that's far more reliable here for Asus ROG.
I feel as well it's reining Yopper in slightly and saying, look mate, you've kind of got to play a tank in this meta at the moment. You can't be picking that Fiora up into the top lane, into the Poppy all of the time. He's picked Maokai here. It works so much better in the team composition, as you said. And when you look at Asus ROG, they're just so much more complete as a lineup, as a composition here. Everything works together. There's no part of it that stands alone, like the Fizz pick yesterday or the Fiora pick yesterday. This is a much more an analysed and thought through composition.
I think this is a composition that much better suits the meta that we've seen develop over today.
I just wanted to interrupt, guys. Nocturne has been locked in here for Memento, and that's something that's quite interesting because we saw him play Kha'Zix yesterday, and now he's going towards Nocturne, which functions in a similar role to the way you'd want your Kha'Zix to work. You know, you want to start trying to snowball as quickly as possible. The issue with Kha'Zix versus Nocturne is Kha'Zix has, you know, built into his kit a way to get out. The way we saw Larsen's team make Nocturne work yesterday was by having the Shen. It provided the fail-safe that should Nocturne be put into a precarious position, Shen is there to back him up. He can either shield him with the ultimate or taunt up those threats that could be trying to take down the Nocturne. With the Nocturne here with the Poppy, there is only one button. That button is all in. You know, Nocturne doesn't have many other modes, right? In fact, he doesn't have another mode. Nocturne's only mode is dive. Go all in and dive. So if you're behind and you're trying to make that work, it doesn't function as well as some other assassins coming from the jungle.
I think one huge factor in that scenario could well still be the top laner. If you can get a fantastic keeper's verdict and knock a couple of the people away as Nocturne goes in, you turn yourself into a 4 or 3 versus 5, then you found a fantastic situation. But much more difficult scenario to achieve.
I totally agree with that. I think the reason that Nocturne's picked over Kha'Zix some points is the range of his engage. You know, Kha'Zix has to be a lot closer. You're looking at just leaping in and out. Nocturne will be going a lot further distances and getting a lot further away from the Poppy. So unless you're timing the teleport in immediately as you're paranoiaing in, you're not going to have that top laner there to back you up.
You need to have a flank from the Poppy. Poppy needs to have good positional advantage to make that work. The other thing that we've seen here with the Nocturne is you've got the LeBlanc. Now, when you have a Nocturne, you need someone that can follow you up to the same extent. You had the Shen there that could provide that element of follow-up while the team caught up to the Nocturne. With the LeBlanc, you now have an assassin that can make those gap-closing plays and take out the target that Nocturne is focusing. So, you know, you have got that ability to assassinate a target here. You know, and that is the combination that we're looking for when you've got a Nocturne, someone to follow him up. But the problem is, you need the rest of the team then to follow up that too, and that's probably where Nami comes in. Nami does help accelerate the team forward and slow down the opposition. Multiple ways that we could potentially see this Nocturne team work.
So my big question now is, when we look at the games that these guys played yesterday, we saw Asus ROG lost to LDLC. Now, LDLC, we've already seen today and yesterday, are a very, very good team. This is a team of high caliber. So Asus had a very difficult time in that matchup. Now, on the other side of the scale, you've got Nerv, who managed to beat Babaski. Babaski not really having as much of a strong performance, and Nerv, when it got later on in the game, kind of had a fairly easy time of it. Do you think that coming into this matchup, maybe we're underestimating Asus ROG because of their matchup and maybe overestimating Nerv because of theirs?
Yeah, potentially. The thing is that from that draft phase, though, I think Asus ROG got a better draft. I mean, if you were to give me those drafts and put them on equal skill tier and say who I would prefer, I'd probably give it over to Asus ROG. It's more, there's less things that can go wrong, right? When you've got a Nocturne, there's always that element of, if you don't get rolling, things can start to go wrong. And remember, like we said, there's that one button for Nocturne at the moment. The one button is go in, and that might not be what you want to do in a lot of given situations. But then you are now comparing Nerv to Asus ROG. And Asus ROG are a fantastic team, don't get me wrong, but Nerv are an ex-challenger team. You know, and they've got the caliber of players that you would expect to perform at this kind of level. And so despite the drafting phase, you know, I would still lean towards Nerv here, even though Asus ROG have drafted excellently.
For me, it comes down a lot to how Memento plays, because yesterday on the Kha'Zix, he really didn't have the best of performances in the early game, and Nocturne is, as we've been saying, very similar to Kha'Zix. You need to get in, you need to be aggressive, you need to try and get those kills early on to get yourself snowballing, because you never see a tank Nocturne. Like, no one builds tank Nocturne. You need some items under your belt, you need some aggressive AD. And if Memento doesn't perform in the early game, their whole team composition falls apart.
So now I want to look towards the top laners, because we've got Yopper here, who he's decided to go onto a much tankier top laner now. We've got Maokai versus Poppy, which is kind of a bit of an age-old matchup, really, the tank versus tank. Do we think Yopper's going to be able to actually have an impact on a game on a tanky hero? We usually see him go for more carrier-orientated tops.
Maokai can have an impact whoever's playing. I mean, Maokai's one of these champions that realistically you can do very little wrong. There is a lot of, micro plays that Maokai can make, using, we saw it for instance on phones. While they lost the game, he actually had some excellent micro plays. You're laughing at me.
No, I'm not laughing at you. I think phones, I was going to use phones as sort of a counter example because I agree with you. At small points, his micro was good, and there are small micro things you can do. So yes, that point was entirely correct. But I think if the problem with Maokai is if you're not facilitating your team, you don't really have that much impact in the game at all. Poppy, however, can still split push, can still work into those split pushes. Maokai really struggles with that.
Okay, right. It's time to get your predictions, guys. Sona, we'll start with you this time. Who do you think is going to be able to take this one? Because I think it's just going to go Nerv, right? I'm going to go Asus ROG Army. Also because I worry Memento's not going to show up, like he didn't really show up yesterday.
Sure.
I
think Asus ROG have a more salient team composition, and I liked what I saw from them yesterday. I just think this composition will suit them better.
Okay.
He's right. I think I have to go for Nerv on this. I mean, they've got the caliber of players. They have the pedigree behind them. They have the kind of composition that we saw, Team Larson Reborn run, where they could maybe run away with things if it gets going.
Absolutely. I'm going to agree with you on that one. I'm going to go for Nerv as well. But we are in game, so I'm going to pass it over to you two fine gentlemen to take this one away.
Thank you very much, Munch. As you say, we're on to the Summoner's Rift. It's Game 3 of Day 2 of this Challenger Series qualifications, and we have Asus ROG Army up against Nerv. It's the winners of the Regional League in Spain up against the residing Challenger team, who did come 6th in that Challenger tournament last split, though. So Nerv, perhaps full of nerves, perhaps a bundle of them. Will the Army be able to knock them down? That's the big question as we get on into this matchup.
So we were talking about the Maokai, and me and you had differing opinions on the way Phones played. I actually think I agree with you with his macro-orientated play. I mean, the problem with Phones is he actually felt like he was tankier than he was for a large portion of the game. He would sit there trying to be the hero for his team when necessarily it might not have been the ideal situation, but, it's very hard to play as a Maokai from behind.
Yes.
This is the one issue with Maokai. You generally become an anti-tower dive tool as the game progresses if you're playing as a team that is behind with a Maokai. When you have Maokai as a head, it's great. You can just jump on turrets, you can take people out, you can be as aggressive as you like, but if you haven't had that gold input to get to those item spikes to allow you to be that tanky, playing from Maokai, as behind feels awful. It feels like you aren't tanky enough. It feels like you can't do anything. It feels like you can't make those aggressive plays with the Twisted Advance.
Exactly. And actually, I want to just, I think they're just making Nocturne's clear really quick here. So it's something you do see sometimes. He takes his Wolves, then he clears the blue buff out as well. Because the Nami has ebb and flow, she can sustain in lane a little bit, so choose back to full HP straight away. And Memento gets a quicker blue buff. So it's a small jungle optimization we don't always see that can work out quite well.
But they have just ended up losing a large portion of their lane experience.
You lose one minion. You lose one minion.
Did you? I thought they lost about 2 there.
No, there's 2 cannon minions at the front.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, you're right. I was looking at the red. For some reason, I was looking at the red minions. I'm a tool. But still, you lose a little bit of experience. It really depends what Nocturne wanted to do with that. I think that gets him a very early level 3. It's like getting level 3 off 2 camps on the bot side of red, but it just means he's looking essentially to be as aggressive and clear his jungle as quickly as possible. Maybe looking to an impact a lane earlier than expected. That could be potentially the cause, but also it does mean he's accelerating towards level 6 more quickly.
Part of it as well is that you avoid the early Rek'Sai counter jungle that can happen. Of course, Rek'Sai can heal herself up, as she burrows underground and then go in for some pressure on the Nocturne, who does go quite low on that burst clear of the jungle. Because you get helped out of your blue buff, you can spam a little bit more in the jungle, you can clear out a little bit more as well. And it means that you're not at risk of being ganked early on.
Absolutely. I think just, getting Nocturne to level 6 is beneficial for all lanes, especially in that bot lane. So, if you can just help him out, clear his jungle a little bit quicker on that first rotation, he should... Is he going to hit level 5 off this first rotation? That might be enough experience.
I'm not sure if you hit level 5.
No, but he'll be very close regardless, right? Because he's level 4 when he started taking that Krug camp, so he's going to be very close to level 5 regardless.
And here's Yoppa and Ruin just trading in the top lane at the moment. I want to talk about top lane matchups, because after that also I want to talk about mid lane matchups. So we've got a couple of matchups to talk about. Maokai into Poppy, Scoundrel. It's a matchup we see so commonly, but how do you feel this one should end up sort of pushing, and who do you think has the advantage in the lane?
Well, interestingly enough, I've always thought that Maokai can push Poppy in slightly early. It looks like actually Ruin's doing the opposite to Yoppa, but realistically, it will eventually become a very standard tank matchup. You're very unlikely to see either or when you get to the later levels be taking one out one-on-one. So you don't expect to see too much action up there in the top lane. The mid lane matchup is a little bit more interesting, though. You probably, on tier list, make these equal. We're going to see a gank, though, Sona in the bot lane. Flash in!
Flash out by a Chu as well, but he still gets snared up. Here comes the damage from Sanchez, and it's a Chu the target. He's going to go down, sneezed off the face of Summoner's Rift. He goes to Chu, and Sanchez says, thank you very much, I'll take the first kill.
I mean, that was excellent pathing by Eco there to use that blast cone to go into the Dragon Pit, then find a gap in the wards. Now, classically, there isn't any wards there at all, by the way, so that he could have come in from any direction, but he took the path that, was more likely to be free of wards.
I think there was a Tribush ward that's just gone down, so
okay.
Yeah, we were looking at the vision.
But still, he was basically avoiding the obvious ward there. Looks like Nocturne's going to dive Yoppa here. That's some really good work by Ruin early on.
Yeah, Ruin doesn't even need his Nocturne there. Memento didn't even get an assist on the kill. However, they can push the wave in. Yoppa struggling a lot in that lane into Ruin. We saw him struggle into a Poppy yesterday as well. Ruin doing work, and if this Poppy gets ahead, she can be an indomitable tank in that top lane.
I mean, she will be an indomitable tank. The max percentage health that comes down from Hammer Smash is fantastic against these tanks, but essentially you wouldn't expect Maokai to be troubled that heavily. However, Yoppa getting taken on one-on-one in this matchup is not what you expect, and it's a great start here for Ruin. We saw him play extremely well in the top lane in the previous game that they played. We're going to see a bit of pressure coming out here.
Suna taking a little bit of hurt. Liv Xian doesn't really have any mana left, though, so can't push too aggressively there. It looks like Eco's coming down towards bottom lane again. It's a smart move as a Chu does not have flash. Eco does. They're going to go for the dive, and that's enough. Rapper takes down the kill. Asus Rogue Army focusing their battalions in the bottom lane, and they're winning the battle.
Eco doing some serious work down there. It is so good if you can get the lockup and get the first target to be hit by Piercing Arrow, the target that you want to get the damage down onto, because if you can lock them up with the Karma, get an empowered inner fire down, and then the Piercing Arrow hits too, that's an amazing amount of damage, and you're seeing it happen time and time again. Eco doing some good work in the bot lane, and that means that when Memento hits level 6, there's already an advantage that he has to claw back from Rog for his bot lane of a Chu and Cass.
It's smart play. It's exactly what we didn't see happen yesterday from Team Last and Reborn. We didn't see that early aggression bot, and it meant that Team Last and Reborn were able to get some early ganks off. Now, I want to bring your attentions to mid lane. Have a look at the Syndra versus LeBlanc matchup. It's not something we too commonly see, mostly because either Syndra or LeBlanc are banned out in that draft phase, but how do you feel this one goes down?
Oh, looks like we have a gank though, Sona.
Paranoia onto Rapper, tries to get himself away. Eco says goodbye, support. Rapper goes down. It's an easy kill, the first Paranoia of the game, picking up a kill for the mid lane.
And it gives it over to Suno. Now this is interesting because you see a LeBlanc with teleport versus a Syndra without teleport. Obviously LeBlanc with teleport gives a huge amount of map pressure. A nice Aqua Prison here.
Sanchez will just have to flash away. The problem always is, of course, Aqua Prism into trap just locks you up for such a long period of time. And Memento is coming down as well. They are going to look to pressure this turret. Eco is just around the corner though, so perhaps they will back away.
Yeah, I think they realise that, and they are just going to shy away from a potential tower dive here. I'm going to talk about this mid lane matchup a bit more because, both of these mid laners will very efficiently go towards a Negatron cloak in their build path. Yeah. So it means that they're going to be going toe-to-toe with each other regardless. Suno is going to be able to dodge away from the orbs that are going down to the ground. It means that you're not going to get a completely clean Unleashed power down. This is a moderately even matchup in a lot of people's books. A lot of it comes down to skill, and with the teleport it does give Suno the potential to impact the map, potentially more so than you might see Lyson. Remember, as you get further in levels as LeBlanc, your wave clear does get more and more efficient, so you should be able to deal with what Syndra is bringing to the table.
Huge amount of damage just coming down there from Suno, just bops in, gets that passive off, and then bops himself straight back up. Shadow Orb does a massive amount of work when it can. Yoppa's still being pushed out by Ruin in the top lane.
You said the Shadow Orb, but that's the most important part. LeBlanc is so slippery that it's very difficult to land the Shadow Orb. Remember, when you see a Syndra in lane, usually the way that she steps up towards picking off kills here and there is Shadow Orb. Then she throws the Shadow Orb onto her target, and then after that, once she's got 6 Shadow Orbs onto the field, she then uses the Unleashed power.
Yeah, those Dark Spheres really do a huge amount of work.
Thanks, Sona. I just completely trusted you. The Shadow Orb was the ability there.
I was saying Shatter Orb, which is LeBlanc's Q.
Oh, sorry, dude.
It doesn't matter. It's fine. Dark Spheres can do a huge amount of work for the Syndra. As you say, Suno did land that Shatter Orb in, which is what got the first damage onto the Syndra as well. Liv Xian, though, having a much better time on this Syndra than he was on the Fizz yesterday. It's equal-ish on CS. Suno jumps in, tries to get the chains down, will lock up Liv Xian. Unleashed power comes back. not enough to burst through Suno just quite yet.
And that's what you see, there's sort of basically almost here and there, the brick and brack of this mid lane is that you'll never be able to get a full combo that you'd like. Although actually Suno gets locked up and is forced to flash there because of the scatter the weak. Got locked up against the turret, that's not what he would have liked, but essentially LeBlanc shouldn't be hit by many of these orbs, essentially. She shouldn't be hit, and then therefore you're never going to get a full damage combo after having chunked them down originally.
And Liv Xian, of course, with that blue buff as well, can just spam out those Dark Spheres to push up the wave. That's what he's done. Eco setting up around this Mountain Drake. A good first objective for one of these two teams if they can get them. Eco might go down towards bottom lane instead. There is a ward spotting him out there. No sweeper yet for him, so unable to deny the vision from Nerv. Memento spotted out though, and this is such an important part of the game now, is spotting junglers, understanding where they are, understanding what rotations they're doing, be able to keep track.
You see the ward there that is placed in that tri-brush for Asus Rogue. It's a really important ward because that's the closest location usually that Memento will be able to get that isn't already in lane to make his ultimate happen. You can see here he has been spied out. He's not going to be able to efficiently come into lane, although he does come over with the blast cone, so they will have an idea that he's probably slinking around. Eco is coming in for the counter gank, however. This is exactly what you want from your Rek'Sai if Nocturne is looking to make an impact.
You have to think in a 3v3, when you look across the items, Asus Rogue Army have this bot lane locked up. BF sword into Cull? Like, who on earth thinks they're going to win with a Cull and a dagger over a BF sword? Well, perhaps Nerv do. They jump onto Sanchez, and he just gets destroyed. Eco, too late to the party. Nerv pick up another kill.
Again, you know, like you say, we talked about it previously with the way that Nocturne was being played for Team Larsen Reborn. Even if you're there for the counter gank, you almost have to be on top of the target before Nocturne is to actually have an impact. And then you see there, Nocturne able to just completely obliterate the person that he had chosen to execute with that paranoia. And actually, really great for Achu. He actually picks up the kill, makes the Cull even more so worth it because he's picked up a little bit of extra gold in the bank too. It's actually a really good turnaround in terms of bot lane pressure here for Memento and the Nerv squad.
Yeah, the ability just to get that kill. It did look like Nerv were going to try and set up for a 4-man dive, but Liv Xian was aware, he was awake to the danger, and he came down towards that bot lane just to squash any hopes that Nerv may have had. Suno's doing an okay job of farming up this lane, you know, now with the Sigil of Malice being the passive now on LeBlanc, the wave clear is pretty strong. When you get all of those passive procs off, you can just do a rise in no uncertain terms and spell flux the wave, basically, which is exactly what the LeBlanc is going to do. I'd like to see a little bit more roaming from both these mid laners. At the moment, it feels a little bit like they're just pushing back and forth against each other. It's kind of been the story of the tournament thus far.
That sometimes happens in mid lane, though, because every mid laner that is currently S tier is incredibly adept at pushing waves. So if you end up trying to roam and being unsuccessful, you could lose a whole host of pressure onto your mid lane tier 1. And that mid lane tier 1 is probably the most important early turret in the game. It opens up so much of the map for your opposition that if you let it go for free, you've made a huge mishap.
Mid lane never bothered me anyway. Sometimes you do have to let objectives go to be able to get them elsewhere on the map. We see a lot of the time, people 4-man dive that bot lane to try and get that turret early, maybe lose a bit of pressure top or lose a bit of pressure mid, but getting that first turret is vital for a team's chances to survive. Abyssal Scepter's just finished on the mid lane now as well. Both the AD carries now have a BF sword, so Caitlyn in a lot stronger position there, although she is lagging behind on those creep scores. Yeah,
but that's probably due to the early pressure that Eco managed to put down there. I mean, the 2 deaths on Caitlyn won't have helped. You coming in here, you're seeing a gank.
Here's the paranoia onto Liv Xian, does flash away and gets himself to safety. Suno had gone in, perhaps ever so slightly early, before the paranoia was able to come out.
If he landed the chains, then he might have been in a slightly better position there. But again, forcing the flash from Syndra is no issue really. That's great for them, but again, every paranoia that you use and don't get anything out of is a large portion of the game now where Nocturne is probably just going to have to return to farming, waiting for that cooldown to come back for him, because Nocturne realistically without paranoia really not one of the best impact junglers. Can't do what Rek'Sai can do and just walk into a lane, find a great position and look for a gank. Nocturne, again, has to come from an area where the enemy doesn't have vision, so he can kind of surprise through lane position more than anything. So now he's just got to wait for that paranoia to come off cooldown. He's going to try and find another opportunity. These deep wards that Rek'Sai is putting in is keeping this bot lane incredibly safe. I am so impressed. Might have been Rek'Sai, might have been the Karma, but realistically, getting those deep wards in, it basically keeps all areas areas safe from a Nocturne gank, and you can see all the key areas that Nocturne will be looking to enter the lane via lit up with blue wards.
Yoppa's done a relatively good job as well of keeping himself okay in this lane. He's about 20 CS down, and of course that kill happened earlier on, but since then he's been able just to farm himself up. He's running through corrupting potion stacks as often as he can. He's about to pick up a Sunfire cape as well, which will help him out a huge deal in clearing the waves. But as you said, vision on the junglers has been paramount this game, and Eco's getting caught out by control wards. Actually, he won't have seen that one because he was burrowed, so he doesn't actually realize there's a ward there spotting him out.
Will now.
But Nerv will know, and Eco actually still won't. He won't know he's been spotted by that.
I thought he went close enough to it, but maybe he's just too scared to potentially move towards it. They are going to clear out that ward that Eco put down, as they did spot that he went through there, so they'll know that there's at least some deep wards happening. But Eco's doing a really good job, like we said, of keeping the Varus and Karma safe in the bot lane. Sanchez and Rafa will be very happy. Teleport coming in really deep because of that really deep ward.
Paranoia goes in mid lane as well. Livcian taken out. Unleash power on momentum, not quite enough. But here is Yoppa straight onto a Chu. Counter teleport used, and a Chu caught up in the chain of corruption. Counter teleport just cancelled. The second teleport comes in by Suno, and that's cancelled as well. Nerv at 6s and 7s, not really knowing what they want to do. Ruin will take top turret. They lose first turret blood though. The first brick goes down in the bottom lane, and all of Asus ROG Army are continuing to push while Nerv try and take turrets elsewhere on the map.
They're basically trying to take turret for turret at this point in time. They could lose a tier 2 in the bot lane, but they do take tier 1 top and potentially tier 1 mid. So it's an interesting trade. You'd say more of the map has now opened up for Nerv, but this bot lane has lost all objectives in lane right now for Nerv as well, so they're going to have to be very careful the way they approach this. They do need to start mounting pressure. It does mean that their bot lane probably won't have to switch.
Losing Mountain Drake is pretty big as well, though.
Yeah.
That's a big buff to you. Yoppa gets caught out by just recast. Ace in the hole comes out as well, just to continue the harass. But yeah, losing the Mountain Drake is pretty large of a disadvantage there. Asus ROG able to secure themselves 3 quick objectives. It's
great to have the Mountain Drake when you've got such a good siege composition, as well as having that dive too, because you can very quickly capitalize on any kills by getting more damage to structures, more damage to turrets, more damage to neutral objectives as well. It's a fantastic Drake to have picked up for such a heavy siege composition, but it's a 2-tower trade for 2-tower trade, and the gold is still very even at the end of it here as well. So realistically, you've just got to decide where having the difference in map pressure is worth it. You're actually going to see a lane swap, because I think you're going to see another lane swap from ROG as well, and given that they've lost all of those bot lane towers anyway, they just want to make sure that they're maintaining that tier 1 top lane. They don't want to lose it for free.
I just want to hark back to something you said in Pick and Ban, Scoundrel. You were talking about the Nocturne and LeBlanc combo, the synergy there, where LeBlanc's jumping in alongside the Nocturne. Is that why we've seen so many ganks onto Liversan mid, or has there been an alternate purpose of those ganks?
Well, also you've got to remember that the bot lane, you weren't really going to gank that top lane. Going for a Maokai against the Poppy, there's a lot of ways that Maokai negates the damage and can potentially escape. Also, using the Twisted Advance can avoid a large portion of damage coming through as well. The bot lane was so heavily warded, it wasn't like Memento wasn't trying to gank the bot lane. He just never found the opportunity to do so, because all of that deep vision coming out from Eco and Rafa meant that he never found a good position to use his paranoia. However, you've got an assassin in the mid lane, a fairly immobile mid laner when the summoner spells are down, so it makes sense to potentially go into the mid lane. And remember, good timing of the spell shield from Nocturne as well means you will actually be able to negate the scatter the weak and stick onto your targets. So it just makes a lot of sense to continue to pressure the Syndra, as well as the fact that having the LeBlanc fed, it gives you good win conditions in your composition by being able to jump in and take out that Varus pretty quickly.
Definitely working out for them at the moment. Suno puts the Mimic down, just sends that down towards the bottom lane. How is this top lane / bot lane matchup going to play out from here on out? We've got Sunfire Cape completed on Yoppa. He's got a Ninja Tabi as well. Looks like Suno actually might be coming down for a gank, perhaps just trying to catch out this Maokai underneath the turret. There comes the first chain. Yoppa caught up by it. There's the damage. Suno smites him away with the Shatter Orb. It's an easy enough kill in that bottom lane.
Yeah, but this does mean it's a potential attempt at a tier 1 siege in the top lane. Do think Memento is sticking around there, though, just waiting and trying to clear waves as best as possible. Liversan's now heading up himself. You may see Suno react with the teleport pretty soon, because they are going to spot out the Syndra coming up.
It is a double teleport composition into only a single teleport, and actually Memento jumps straight onto Livcian, has to try and flash away. Memento flashes for the chase, Scatter the Weak knocks him back. and Livcian does use both of his summoners, but is able to escape.
Okay, it looked bad from Memento's perspective that he actually ended up getting scattered the weak and didn't have his spell shield for it, but what it has achieved is a relinquished amount of pressure on that top lane tier 1. You have forced their dive potential back by taking Livcian down. You've made him burn his summoners, which means he'll be an easy target in the next skirmish or team fight, and you also bought time for Ruin to take that bot lane tier 1. So all in all, it's actually a fairly successful paranoia from what it achieved in terms of map pressure for Nerv. You know, it stopped that top lane dive happening. It got all of those summoners off Syndra, and you took a turret from it. It's not that bad.
Not that bad at all. I mean, I'd take that 9 times out of 10.
Exactly.
Interesting Varus build here. Actually, Sanchez mixing things up slightly. Last game, we saw an Infinity Edge first item here. It's Essence Reaver instead. Why do you think he's switched things up here, playing into this Nerv lineup? Essence
Reaver generally tends to be the standard for Varus. A lot of people do tend to go for it. It gives you a little bit of cooldown reduction. Great for the spear-piercing arrow spam. And honestly, Varus in general doesn't benefit from crit as much as other AD carries because he is a caster type AD carry. I mean, he has got great basic attacks, don't get me wrong, he's a good basic attack AD carry in the later stages of the game anyway. But realistically, you know, if you just get some flat damage on, a bit of cooldown reduction, and obviously the mana regeneration is great. You know, it's fantastic for him.
So a lot of the early pressure from Asus Rock has now been quashed by a Nerv. They've put out a few of the fires that were going on across the map, and actually that bot lane push that we saw coming out from Asus Rock has benefited Nerv quite a lot, getting that mid lane tower, getting top lane as well. Ruin is able to fight into Yoppa, meaning that he could go down to bot and get that turret for free as well. There comes a point where Asus Rock kind of have to just say, look, we need to take a tower soon. We need to get mid, we need to get top, because otherwise Nerv can just shut us out of their jungle, they can shut us out of the objectives in the river, and then start to advance their vision line into our own jungle and stop us from being able to go anywhere on the map unabated.
Well, you look at where Nerv's vision line is right now. They've got great control of the river area. They've managed to force them into the red side jungle, and they've kept complete control of their jungle as well. And that's all as a result of that tower trade they made early on. You know, you could say, arguably, taking mid lane and top lane tier 1 is probably more valuable than taking a clean sweep of the bot lane towers, because it just gets you so much more on the map. And it looks like Nerv have used that to the best of their ability. Remember, a lot of these pressures that you've seen, like Memento using that paranoia onto Syndra, is because of the fact they've been able to advance their vision line. They've been able to keep good control of their own side jungle because they still have retained their top and mid lane tier 1. And red side jungle, as the game goes on, especially for red side, becomes more important because that gives you your Baron control, and that gives you, or at least it stops the enemy rotating freely around Baron, and also freely pushing your tier 2 top and mid lane when you eventually lose your tier 1 mid and top.
Well, we're starting to get towards what most people would deem as a late game Excalibur. A couple of items, Memento jumping in straight on towards Sanchez, trying to take him down. Sanchez will flash away, teleport comes out, Chain of Corruption flashed back by Ruin. Nerv escape, but on the edge of their seats.
No, he actually just used his Steadfast Presence. It looked like he flashed.
Oh, really? Was it only Steadfast
Presence? He was just so quick.
Oh, wow,
he was just so quick that he just managed to get away with that Steadfast Presence. So
that's crazy.
He's still got his flash available. Actually, Yoppa here is going to try and lock him up, but that is a very...
Maybe they thought he flashed
as
well.
Yeah, exactly. That is a very tanky Poppy right now.
Yeah. Incredibly tanky.
Oh,
looks like we may have just had to have a
apologies,
pause
guys. The video was interrupted. The streamer stopped streaming.
Sit down as we get back into this game as soon as possible, I'm sure. You have the third of the 3 amigos coming to join us in just a second as well, but for now, you can look at us. Excalibur, talk to me about late game, because we're getting towards that at the moment. These compositions, we talked a little bit about them in Pick and Ban. I was saying I thought Asus Rogue maybe had a better team fight, had a better late game. How do you feel this matches up between the two teams?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been on the side of the longest game goes. We're back in.
Oh, what? Sanchez takes out Ruin. He may have been tanky, but he got caught out. It looks as well like Memento's dead, and now Asus Rogue going for the fight. Suno takes a kill off towards the side. He's on a rampage, but it's a double for Sanchez, and Asus Rogue might just look towards the Baron here. Eco's still alive. Suno on full HP and full mana might be able to turn this one around slightly, but actually Asus Rogue are just going to go up towards top lane. They've decided just to get the objectives.
I'm interested as to how that actually happened. Obviously, we missed a little bit because the video just cut out there, but I mean, it looked like a very solid fight for Asus Rogue. It looks
Suno onto Livcian. Scatter the Weak doesn't connect the chains. 2 of them will connect onto Livcian. Not
you could
quite
even say it was 2 chains.
You could say it was 2 chains, mate. I prefer to say 2 of those chains. But Livcian able to survive there, dodging around quite well. But LeBlanc.
Oh, we might be coming back to us. So I imagine what happened there as Memento, we were still there. Memento actually kept hold of his paranoia. So I imagine he must have been caught out in some respect because he wasn't able to use that in that team fight. Now, if you lose that paranoia, you lose one of your main tools to at least forcing some of the carries back from Asus Rogue. If Nocturne goes down, there isn't really that many direct threats to Livisan or Sanchez. So they can pretty freely function in a team fight without too much worry of being taken out. Now, obviously, Suno can look for a flank, but when you've got a Maokai and a Rek'Sai trying to babysit you, as well as the Karma shields coming through, it's going to be more difficult for Suno to find those types of picks. What Nocturne provides a lot of time is just heavy distraction for Suno to get in there and try and do the majority of the damage.
Well, he's been quite distracting thus far. Suno is 4-0 on that LeBlanc, clearing those waves pretty effectively in the bottom lane as well. Has Morello and Abyssal. Look at the side of Livcian, though. He's on Morello and Abyssal as well, so not a huge disparity between these two mid laners. Asus Rogue trying to get their 4th turret of the game will secure that mid lane tower and open up the map even more for themselves.
Yeah, this has been a very even game thus far, but then if it goes evenly, I'm probably more in favor of Asus Rogue. You know, like I said, they have that composition that doesn't have as many moving parts. It's just a little bit more dependable.
Oh, Ruin. That's not where you want to be. Livcian's going to scatter the weak. Eco looking for the knock-up blast cone, though. Ruin understanding the use of plants. Perhaps he's a vegan, you never know. Able to use the plants effectively for himself. Woe indeed, because the Baron has been started here by Nerv. There's no vision, and no one on Asus Rogue realizes this is going on. Paranoia used as well by Memento just to try and deny any further vision. Nerv are just going to take this. A superb Baron sneak by Team Nerv.
Ruin playing the pantomime right there, just going in, escaping, trying to just almost make it look like he was just trying to keep vision control or keep them away from potentially their blue buff. He gave no indication that Baron was on the cards, and Nerv manages to sneak it through with some superior vision control. Asus Rogue are going to be kicking themselves. Absolutely kicking themselves that they let that go for free. They had to notice that no one from Nerv was there on the map, but with such little vision, you know, there's some very select vision here for Asus Rogue, and none of it is really on Nerv's side of the map.
You have to think as well, you're playing into people who can jump across that wall.
Yeah.
You know, LeBlanc, Nocturne doesn't really manage to do it, but Caitlyn could do it as well. So if you can sneak the Nocturne in, the Caitlyn can get around. There isn't, as you say, much river vision for Asus Rogue, and you have to give credit to Nerv, because it's very easy when Ruin gets spotted out like that just to say, okay, we'll back off Baron, there's no point doing it now. But they held their nerve.
It was a high-risk, high-reward play, and they came out on top.
Let's try to get the pun in there, man.
Oh, sorry.
They held their nerve. That was what I was going for.
Yeah, that was great, but that was actually pretty good.
Yoppa's going to catch Ruin underneath the turret once again. These Baron-empowered minions mean that Suno just adopts that split push position even more. He's got the teleport. He can join a teamfight when he needs to. You've got Caitlyn, you've got Nocturne, you've got Nami to hold down the fort in the middle lane. You've got enough length of engage there, and now Livcian has to come down without teleport and try and deal with Suno alone.
It's great because they're actually trying to play this as a 1-3-1, and realistically, you have to split your wave clear here. The majority of the wave clear that you have comes from Syndra, although obviously Varus Piercing Arrow can do work itself. By putting this 1-3-1 into effect, you have a very good siege AD carry, combined with a decent disengage coming from the Nami. And actually, with the Baron minions, it makes it so much more effective. If you can get a 1v1 in any of these side lanes, like it looks like Suno's trying to do.
Really smart play by Suno. Unleash Power will come back onto him, and here comes Memento, drilling his way down to the bottom lane. Snipes off Livisan. He will have that one haunting him in his nightmares. Eco's going to come in, though. Suno gets the empowered recall. There's the redemption coming out, and Memento flashes away after getting the fear tether on towards Eco. Flash Brace Seeker into the spell shield. Memento might survive. He gets onto the Duskbringer, trying to keep himself alive, and he escapes. And meanwhile, the rest of Nerv, Suno teleports in. They get the mid lane tower, and they're looking for the inhibitor tower as well.
1-3-1 in a nutshell with a hyper-mobile jungler, and Nerv make it play directly into their advantage, taking out that Syndra, especially with the teleport on the LeBlanc, means they can immediately come back and impact another lane when she has to back. It might even be 2 turrets on the back of this. Yoppa's doing everything that he can to stop this, but here comes the wave.
Suno exhausted into the Zhonya's. Ruin knocks his Rapper back. They've got the turret. Rapper's down. Ruin takes him out. Yopper now jumping onto Ruin as well, but somehow he's still alive on this Poppy, healed up. Eco tries to join the fight from the side, not able to get the engage he wants. And Nerv will retreat. They'll get the tower. They'll get out alive unless Livcian has something to say about it. He does get the scatter, but a great Aqua Prism from Cass will stop him in his tracks and stop the AD carry going down. Suno very quickly realizes he doesn't want to be in that situation, but Ruin does, and as does Memento. Livcian between a rock and a very hard place as Memento takes him down. A Chu has been jumped on by Yopper, but Yopper's exhausted. Memento's taken out. Sanchez up towards the side. Yopper in the midst of 3 members of Nerv here could do nothing but die as Nerv take down 3, and Memento and Ruin are just absolutely huge in that front line.
Absolutely, they somehow turned around that particularly hard chase coming out from Asus ROG, and they're going to turn it into an inhibitor as well, Sona. Excellent play. Suno has been outstanding on this LeBlanc at 503, but all credit to Memento. He really stepped up, has put a lot of pressure on those backline carries. He has done the job of a Nocturne. Whenever he spies a weakness from either Livisan or Sanchez, he preys on it. Absolutely preys on it, and then allows his team to capitalize even if he's not getting the kill. His team will make something of it, and they have done every single time. And now ROG, initially in the game for so long, have opened up a 7k gold disadvantage, about 6.5 really. And now they've got to claw it back. And the pressure can continue to be applied by Nerv here, Sony. You have the LeBlanc, you have the Nocturne. You can continue to apply that kind of pressure on a regular basis.
There's a Mountain Drake on the cards here for Nerv as well. We saw Asus ROG pick one up earlier on. Perhaps Eco can snipe it as he wanders by. We'll be aware that it's going on, but it's a very difficult snipe to make. Doesn't have flash, doesn't have any tunnels around either preset or otherwise. Basically go way too early. 1,000 health left on their Dragon, and Memento takes it down. Just makes it so much easier for Nerv to set up this split push, because every bit of damage will be amplified on towards those towers and inhibitors.
Wouldn't be the first time Rek'Sai has sniped an important objective this Challenger Series qualifier, but I wouldn't know because I missed it. Anyway, it looks like they're going to continue to apply pressure. Now they can split their resources again. They might end up going for a 1 and 4. They could go for a 1-3-1, maybe put the 3 down towards the bot lane. Just making sure. Sorry about the feed, by the way, guys. If any of you are wondering, we're taking a direct live feed, so we actually can't control what we see. We're just taking the feed directly from somewhere else. So sometimes it might go wrong, but we're aiming to get it back for you. It's back already. There we go. As
soon as possible, it's back. And Nerv is setting up down towards the bottom lane with Memento here and Cass alongside a Chu. They've got quite a good pushing ability towards this turret, but the wave clear from Asus ROG is pretty darn strong. You know, you've got a Syndra, you've got a Varus, they can clear it out pretty quickly.
This is what happens when you don't 1-3-1, right? You've got a lot of wave clear to contend with, and no matter how good Caitlyn is in the siege, you're not going to get through the ability for those spheres and the piercing arrow to just completely decimate the attempted wave. So that's why if you go into a 1-3-1, you have to then split your wave clear across, and without Syndra, it's just Varus, and Varus realistically doesn't have the most reliable or dependable wave clear. You can see it right there. They just allowed them to siege directly onto that tier 2.
They have to be so defensive as well, because they know, firstly, Suno can come down from mid lane, and secondly, Memento can jump on their AD carry at any given moment. It's so easy for them to get caught out. Ruin is the target here, but we've seen time and time again over this tournament how tanky a Poppy can get. She's even got Trinity Force, and is still incredibly tanky.
That's so interesting to go for Trinity over something like an Iceborne, but Iceborne really not that relevant this game because you realistically got an AP top, you got an AP mid, and
Eco, that's not where you want to be. Caught out in the midst of 3 members of Nerv, taken down, was locked up by the chains, and the rest of Nerv just gathered around him like vultures at a feast. What
Poppy's Trinity Force will do is does make her a viable split push threat. You know, she can actually push waves, she can really put pressure onto structures more efficiently. People taking some damage here,
Chain onto Memento, the redemption will come down. Yopper jumps onto a Chu, he tries to cleanse that one away. Ruin jumps onto Yopper now. Nerv trying to turn the fight around as Suno comes in from the side. Unleash power, Zhonya's through it. Suno tries to jump away, but the twisted advance will catch him up. He does manage to escape with the Mimic Distortion, and Ruin still continues his pressure on that mid lane turret. Looks like that inhibitor tower will fall pretty quickly as the Chu gets his hands into it, but just can't quite take it down. Only one auto from Death. and so much damage from the headshot after the 90 caliber net. Now Suno teleporting in. They might just go straight for Baron as Ruin is too darn tanky to be taken out.
There's no Nocturne though, so they're starting this without the Nocturne. This is going to be up to... Well, they've got a nice bit of vision coming out here, so they definitely know this is going on right now. Nocturne isn't there. Rek'Sai could potentially try and make to look something happen here, as Nocturne is currently sat in mid lane. This is going to be a very precarious Baron steal, but they do get it off the table.
It's not going to happen. The thing is as well, if someone tries to aggress on towards the Baron, Nocturne can always just paranoia them and jump straight in.
Yeah, it just came off cooldown when he got to mid lane, actually. I was worried that it wasn't going to be on cooldown, but he did manage to get it off cooldown as he head towards mid lane. So you're right, he had that paranoia option onto the Baron. He felt pretty safe in that regard. And all of that has allowed these minions to push in towards that Nexus turret and pick it off. So another turret has gone down here for Nerv.
Only one turret remaining between Nerv and their second win of this group stage. They'll be very happy with their performance thus far. This game has been a little bit cleaner than the first game they played against Bobaski yesterday. Asus Rogue Army on the back foot, but still do have an opportunity. Their real worry has to be Ruin, who just looks incredibly difficult to take down. Eco caught out with the Aqua Prism, trying to get into his tunnels. Here comes Suno as well. Eco gets the knock-up, gets the flash away. Memento with the paranoia onto Livcian, but cannot take him down quickly enough as he has to retreat out. Inhibitor falls in mid lane to Ruin and to Achu. And now Nerv have two inhibitors down. Actually, Top's just respawned, so they've only got one, but they do have Baron buff, and they do have a big wave in bot lane. Yeah,
Memento didn't want to commit to that paranoia because he knew that there was no need to. The rest of his team was doing work in the mid lane, and now Nerv looking to solidify this game. The chain comes through. This could be an engage.
Chain onto Cass, but Suno wants to come in from the side. Does get exhausted straight away. Memento trading into Eco. Ruin standing as the front line for the Nerv team. It looks like they might just back away from this one for the moment. Yopper says, oh no, you don't, flash into the twisted advance. Achu is gone. Asus Rock trying to make their final stand, trying to push Nerv back. Memento goes low. Ruin into GA, gets knocked out, and now he's going to be surrounded by the Rogue Army. Tries to get on towards Sanchez. Trinity Force doing work, gets the shield from the buckler. Can't quite get the kill though. And Asus Rock hold on to hope.
Great play from Yopper there, even though they are 10k gold down right now. The major form of sustained damage in a team fight is the Caitlyn. If you can take her out, stick as a group and try and focus the LeBlanc after, it's a pretty good strategy to try and take away your opposition's attempted threat. Caitlyn realistically is the key in the later stage of the game. Obviously, Suno could try and blow people up, but once he's used his rotation and he doesn't get a kill, you have a limited time period where you can try and make the team fight work in your favor. And by taking out Achu, you really solidify that attempted strategy when it comes to taking on the Nerv team 5v5.
That you do. That was incredibly close when you look at it. I mean, the big thing you have to think now for Asus Rogue is you've only got one tower left on the map. You've only got that single Nexus turret defending you from what could easily be a backdoor from Suno or from Ruin. They both got those teleports up pretty darn soon. I mean, Ruin's is up now. Suno's is on its way off cooldown. Nerv have a lot of opportunities to get into the base of Asus Rogue Army.
I don't think you take the risk of a backdoor, but you can definitely start to pressure all three lanes and then collapse on a neutral objective like Elder Dragon. You see here, Asus Rogue, they've got to push well out of their base. Luckily, their side lanes currently have the inhibitors still surviving, so you realistically as a team can push up mid and very effectively be able to then collapse onto the Elder Dragon. The Elder Dragon definitely an objective that Asus Rogue have to keep their mind akin to, and with this Triforce, Poppy will be pushing very quickly and also be a real threat to objectives and structures like that remaining inhibitor in the top lane.
Is Yopper at the point now where perhaps he can trade into this Poppy, or is he just still too far behind?
The thing is, like, I don't even think Poppy's going to be able to effectively kill Maokai, to be honest. This is really just going to be Poppy ignoring Maokai for the most part. He's really not going to do enough damage to worry her, and you can see it right here. They're going to have to either force a fight or make Poppy go 2 versus 1.
The really smart thing here by Nerv is they're also playing around the Elder Drake while this happens. Poppy doesn't care. As you say, Ruin's just going for this inhibitor and will get it pretty easily. Yopper hasn't even taken half his health bar by the time he gets the inhibitor. Now he's just going towards bot lane. Meanwhile, the rest of Nerv are just baiting around that Elder Drake.
This is incredible mind play here from Nerv. They say, well, okay, you go and deal with Poppy, you lose your... You don't deal with her, you lose your inhibitors.
They're going to lose both.
Exactly. You do deal with her, you lose Elder Dragon. It looks like that's going to be the case this time round.
So the Elder Drake does go down. Ruin's still looking for the inhibitor. The rest of Asus ROG are here. They will stop the inhibitor going down, but Eco went for the steal and falls as well. So it ends up being a 1-for-1 with an inhibitor lost and an Elder Drake taken for Nerv.
It was their best case scenario for Asus ROG to try and fish for a steal and then be able to defend the inhibitor. They basically take a 1-for-1 trade but end up losing the Elder Dragon anyway. The problem is here, and that was actually really close. Nami actually ended up, I just noticed, Nami was the one that took the Elder Dragon, so that was not even a smite steal, not even an attempted out smite steal. Nami somehow ended up taking the Elder Dragon. That must have been with a basic attack as well, or I think the bubble can apply damage, but it definitely wouldn't have been with Ebb and Flow.
Yeah, that's true. It's a surprise to see that there was Nami who secured it. It could have been, of course, they killed Eco before the Elder Drake went down. We didn't quite see that. So Inhibitor is now the target here, and you have to think Nerv can take this one. It's a 4v4. Memento is locked up, though. They don't have their frontline tank. Memento dead to the Paranoia. Now Yopper is a good frontline. The redemption comes down. That was from the side of Asus ROG. So we still have a redemption for Nerv.